Welcome back to Painting Lines. And this week we have a midweek update here where we're going to be briefly breaking down the Roland Garros draw that was just released. Obviously, there are still qualifiers going on, but we wanted to give our thoughts looking at the draw and see what our immediate reactions would be to some of the matchups there.
Yeah, pretty excited to see the draw come out. I feel like it was just yesterday when Houston started, like to kick off the clay season back in the US. And then players been playing in Europe for a while now, and finally it all culminates within the next couple weeks. Man, that center half is tough. I gotta say, that's what sticks out to me the most.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the road to the final. I'll break that down a little bit more later from Tennis TV. They posted a kind of hypothetical players he may face and doesn't look easy for his side.
And I know you mentioned that there are still qualifiers being played right now. I was going through just to check the scores, and I saw Luca Van Ash, French player, is playing through qualies, which I thought for sure the French Federation would have given him a wild card. I mean, they've given I want to say six. I was looking six wild cards to French players, and then one to a U.S. player as like a reciprocity, where they do that, and then one to an Australian player because they do that as well, and then also to Stan Wawrinka. So I'm surprised that Van Ash kind of got left out in the dirt here. I feel like maybe it's because he hasn't really panned out in the last couple of years, and they've been giving him wild cards. I'm not sure.
I would guess it has something to do with maybe his ranking position right now and the fact that they also gave one to Gasquet. I don't know what would contribute to that, but yeah, it is a little surprising given the fact that it is the French Open, so they're going to give a lot of French wildcards.
Yeah, and he was one of the next gen guys. Like he's been playing in that tournament. But anyway, yeah, let's get on to the draw here.
100%. So first up, let's talk about some potential first round upsets. So up first, we have a guy that's a former finalist here, Tsitsipas, playing Echeverry in the first round. Honestly, not a great draw for either of these guys. Obviously, Tsitsipas has a great history here at the French, but Echeverry is a guy that is, based on ranking points, the number 27 clay player in the world, whereas Tsitsipas is only number 13 right now. So could definitely be a matchup that is difficult for the first round.
Yeah, I know. That kind of stinks for Tsitsipas. I mean, Echeverry he's one of the clay guys, so it's always a bummer when you run into someone like that, especially for Tsitsipas who's been struggling. I think he gets it done, but it's not going to be easy. I can see this being like a 4 or 5 setter.
Yeah, I mean, he does have the positive of he did play him in Monte Carlo last year and kind of dominated him 6-1, 6-0. So that's going to be in the back of their heads going into this match. Could either be motivation for Echeverry or it could be maybe a detractor in terms of his confidence.
Yeah, good point there.
Next up, we got Nakashima, who is seated at number 28 versus Navone. Navoni is the higher ranked guy in terms of clay points. He's number 51, whereas Nakashima is number 60. So this is a situation where, yes, Nakashima is the higher ranked guy overall, but on clay, that may not actually line up correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see all these guys who are, have the seed coming in and then have to play these South American clay rats. Like I think Navoni beats Nakashima here.
Yeah, I would definitely wouldn't be surprised to see that one. And speaking of Americans, I think this one's a little bit more of a dark horse to see the upset here. But Fritz playing Altmaier in the first round, we know Altmaier can get it done at the French. I mean, he beat Sinner last or not last year, but I believe 2023, and that was a massive upset even then before Sinner made that step up. But we know Fritz isn't the strongest on clay. He just lost today to Hurkacz in Geneva, so he doesn't have necessarily the most confidence coming in here, and Altmaier knows that he on his day can get it done at the French.
Yeah, this one's going to be tough. I could see Fritz losing first round,
Yeah, it
honestly.
could be
The
it could
four
be that
seed leaving, yeah.
100%. It could be that one that you see like, oh my God, this guy got beaten in the first round, and they always have kind of one of those that happens in the first
Hmm.
couple rounds of these slams. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Fritz. Then again, I think Fritz did play a little bit better at the French last year. I think he had his best result at the French. I think he made it to the fourth round. So maybe he is building a little bit of confidence on that clay.
Yeah, his match against Hurkacz was a quarterfinal, right? So, I mean, at least he's got a couple wins under his belt coming in.
Yeah, but I think he did get a bye to the round of
So he
16
played
in
one.
Geneva.
All
So I
right,
think
he got
it was
one
like kind of
win.
second round, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
those
why it's
small
always
tournaments, it's like, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's always weird at those smaller tournaments because it's like, oh, they made a quarterfinal, but it's like if you were
oh,
a high seed, you just won one match. So,
yeah, that's true.
and then another one that's a little bit of a dark horse. I think you put this one on here is Zverev playing against Tien in the first round.
Yeah, I put this one on here because I do think it's worth mentioning just because Zverev, although I do think he beats Tien, I do think that this matchup will be interesting. Like with the baseliners, Tien, he had, quite a big run last Grand Slam in Australia. Zverev's kind of been struggling. And I feel like the matchup might favor Tien here. Like it all kind of depends on whether or not Zverev's serve is on. Because if it's on, I think it's going to be pretty damn hard to break him. But otherwise, I think Tien can hang on in those long rallies and just kind of push Zverev.
100%. I mean, Zverev isn't a guy that has a lot of confidence right now. He had one good run in like the last five tournaments, and other than that, it's been kind of first or second round exit. It seems like. Seems
Yeah.
like.
What do you think? You think how far do you think Zverev will go? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think it's really tough to say because I was going to talk about this with the Djokovic Zverev quarterfinal projection later, but I'll bring it up now. I think that with Zverev, if you look at history, right, he's uh, done solid here in the past. He's made the semifinal. He made the final last year. And you're like, okay, obviously this guy's great on clay. He's going to make a deep run. And then you look at recently and it's like, okay, is it really accurate to say he did this last year, he'll do it this year? Because based on the performances in the most recent tournaments, he doesn't look like a French Open finalist.
No, not even close. I think you kind of hit it right there. If you would have asked me right after Australia who's going to be, a finalist in the French, I would have said Zverev, no doubt. But now, not so sure.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny too, because I always think about how some fans are just watching for the Grand Slams. And so they're coming in here going,
Mm.
Zverev did great at Australia. Obviously, he's going to do great here. But there's so much more context of if you look at how he's done for the rest of the season, it hasn't been that positive.
Yeah, and then speaking up in the lead up, right now in Hamburg, he loses a match too. So
Exactly. Exactly.
can't come in
To a
with
pretty big
momentum.
underdog.
Yeah. Who was it again?
I believe it was either Rinderknecht or Muller. I knew it was one of the French guys.
Okay. Gotcha. Wow.
So yeah, and then this is the one matchup we wanted to highlight here from what we've seen is Hurkacz versus Fonseca. You want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, I just think this is going to be the best round one matchup. I could see this going 5 sets. I think Hurkacz gets it done here just because of Fonseca's like volatility, and I think Hurkacz he's kind of cruising right now. He's kind of racking up some good wins, so I think he gets it done. But this is definitely one on the radar that you got to tune into.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat Fritz today, I think, like I mentioned, and he's been playing a lot better recently. So that's definitely a positive sign. We were talking about how he's been coming back from this injury that's been bugging him for a while. And like you said, Fonseca has that peak level ability. We know he can make shock upsets. He beat Rublev at the last Grand Slam, but whether he'll be able to stay in a 5 set match against someone like Hurkacz, it's tough to see him pulling it off. But like you said, it's definitely possible, which makes this one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting, first round matchup.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the odds for this, like how much they're gonna put Fonseca as the underdog. Because
Yeah,
remember when he played Tommy Paul, he was the favorite, which
yeah,
was insane.
crazy.
Disrespect to Tommy.
Yeah, definitely. And then going through just the rest of the first round, there's some other interesting matchups I just wanted to bring up maybe for people to watch is Thompson versus Lehechka. Two guys that are a little bit under the radar, but are definitely both quality players, have made solid runs in the past at Grand Slams. Uh, Shelton versus Sonego. They
Ooh.
played in the quarterfinal of the last slam, and now it's a first round matchup. So it'll be interesting to see how that matchup compares on clay versus on the hard court in Australia. And one other one that I think I would have said maybe last year is Jari versus Feast, but it doesn't really feel the same right now because obviously Jari has kind of fallen off a cliff in terms of his performances recently.
No, I agree. And Feast is a guy, like when the draw first came out, I was looking for him. And when I saw he was playing Jerry, the first instinct was, oh, this is going to be a sweet match. But then you got to take a step back. And Yeah, Jerry's just not the same that he was last year, but still, nonetheless, looking forward to this match. And I'm pretty juiced up on Feast's tournament here. I think he's gonna have a run.
Oh, well, I think he's may have to face
Yeah, he's in the
Sinner relatively early,
fourth
right?
round, or
Yeah,
yeah, that's true. That's gonna be quite the matchup right there.
100%. And then you talked about the wild cards earlier. Vavrinka
Hmm.
and Gasquet both getting wild cards. It's just cool to see them in the tournament, and I think they're guys that if they play well, they could get a win or two. I mean, two would probably be a stretch for, especially for Gasquet. I could think he would play Sinner in the second round, but still cool to see them in there.
Yeah, I feel like Gasquet, this could be his last year on tour. Maybe I heard like
I,
that he's
I
retiring
believe
soon. Yeah.
I think I brought that up that he was retiring, and I think this might even be his last tournament that he's going to
Yeah, so that
retire
makes
after this tournament.
sense. That makes sense. Wawrinka's still kicking. We'll
Yeah,
see.
100%. He's
And
like,
he's
nah, I'm
won
just
this
going to keep going.
tournament. Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going to keep going forever until they stop giving me wild cards.
Yeah. I mean, there you go.
Um, but then let's look a little bit further down in the tournament. Let's look at these quarterfinal matchups that are possible here, right? We got in the top half, we got Sinner versus Draper. What are your initial thoughts about this possible matchup?
Ooh, this is interesting. I mean, both guys kind of lack fitness ability, but I want to say with Sinner's time off, I think this works to his favor. Draper, I think he's having a good clay season. I don't think he gets it done against Sinner. I mean, we saw US Open last year. Sinner beat him in 3 sets. I think this will have a pretty similar result if they do meet each other.
Yeah, and I mean, like you mentioned, the cardio for me, I'm honestly more thinking about Draper's cardio. I think Sinner has it relatively locked in at this point, and he's also coming in fresh. He hasn't played a bunch of tournaments leading up to this, but we know that's been an issue for Draper in the past. Obviously, in that match you talked about with Sinner, he ended up
Hmm.
throwing up in I think the second set, so
Yeah.
not easy in tough conditions for him. But he did play great in the last two tournaments, so it's tough to see where that matchup will end up going. And I talked about Sinner's freshness. We talked about whether or not there was rust there, and there was no rust in Italy. So I think the freshness is definitely going to be a benefit for him.
Yeah, definitely. And last week we talked about how efficient Sinner is on the court. And I feel like this can kind of work to Jack Draper's favor, right? Like Sinner's not just going to sit there and hit rally balls back and forth. Like he's going to end points early. And I feel like this might actually help Draper because the points aren't going to last as long and he may have more time in between points. And I think it's going to be a big, like heavyweight matchup, a lot of big blows.
Yeah, so maybe on clay, it would be tougher for him to play someone like Alcaraz who just gets everything back.
Exactly.
And then the other potential quarterfinal matchup in the top half is Zverev versus Djokovic. My first thought about this one is like, is it going to be Zverev showing another legend, just show him the door? Obviously, played Nadal last year. You were at that match, and Djokovic this year, he's just such a question mark. I feel like in this matchup, I already talked about this with Zverev, but it in the past, if we were going, okay, let's look at the past few years, you would almost guarantee, okay, 100% Zverev and Djokovic both are going to be in the quarterfinals. But then if you look based on the recent results, it feels like either or both could be eliminated before this stage.
Yeah, that kind of shows where we are, like what stage we are in the tennis world. And I'm not really sure what to think here. Like you said, I don't know if either of these guys will actually make it here, but that would be pretty funny if Zverev does shove Djokovic the door like he did Nadal last year. I mean, then he's definitely just the type of guy who it's not really the fan favorite there. And
Yeah, and they played in the
I,
Australian Open as well, and
I
and
was gonna say,
Djokovic played one set.
yeah, exactly. And it would have been interesting to see that full match because I think Djokovic had a like a pulled hamstring, right? So he didn't even really give 100% that set too.
Yeah, I wonder how Djokovic will look after a couple rounds in this tournament.
Yeah. I've been watching highlights from Geneva. He looks all right. I wouldn't say great, but all right.
Yeah, and
Still got
then
the fire. Smashed his racket against Arnaldi, which is great to
100%, yeah,
see.
it is maybe a positive to see that he still
Hmm.
cares about it.
Hmm.
And then in the bottom half, we got another interesting matchup potentially is the Musetti versus Fritz. But this is one where even more than the last matchup, I would be really impressed if Fritz made it this far because it would be his best result at the French Open. He made it the fourth round last year, like I mentioned. And similarly with Musetti, he's also only made it past the fourth round one time at a slam, which was obviously last year's Wimbledon semifinal. But this is a matchup where both of these guys, if they made it here, it would be their best performance at the French Open.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And kind of going back to what I said before, I don't see Fritz making it this far, but Musetti, yes. I'm excited for him.
100%. And then the last one is Rude versus Alcaraz. I got to be honest, not the nicest draw for Rude here, right? I mean,
Mm-mm.
it's a two-time finalist playing against the reigning champ, and it's only in the quarterfinals. But I just think Alcaraz is looking almost unbeatable. I mean, reigning champ, and he's only lost one match on clay this year, which was the final against Runa in Barcelona. So that was a matchup where I guess it was just Runa having his day, right? And so it will take a lot to beat Alcaraz. It seems like.
Yeah, yeah. Funny you mentioned pretty tough draw for Rude. How about Alcaraz having an easy draw? I mean, definitely the best draw out of the top guys. Way easier than Sinner, I'll say.
100%. And yeah, I was just about to bring up this post from Tennis TV that I saw, which was describing the road to the final from Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner. And for Alcaraz, they gave a couple of matchups for each round, couple of potential matchups. And his road goes Nishikori first round for Alcaraz, which is could be an interesting matchup to watch, but you don't feel like Nishikori really has the best chance.
Hmm.
Morojan or Nardi. I mean,
Ooh,
yeah, those are guys that have pulled off upsets in the past, but when you're looking at Alcaraz's level right now, don't feel like a threat really. Impeshi Pericard and Bergs, not the toughest matchup it looks like in the third round. Shelton Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas,
oh,
former
dude,
finalist,
yeah, but
but
he's cruising.
he's not been doing great recently. And then Ruud or Paul is the
All
quarterfinal
right.
potential matchups. Fritz Musetti in the semifinal, and Sinner or Zverev is what they're looking at here, based on just the highest seeds, I think. And then on the other side for Sinner, it's Rinderknech, Gasquet, or Atmain. So honestly, Sinner's first two rounds don't look that bad. But then you got Fokina or Lehechka,
Oh,
Fils or Rublev, Draper or Deminar, Zverev or Djokovic, and then Alcaraz or Fritz, based on
yeah.
the seeds.
Those guys can give him trouble. I think he'll
100%.
get it done, but he'll definitely be pushed.
Yeah, it looks like at least for the first, honestly, the first couple rounds looks like Sinner doesn't have the toughest matchups, but then it just kind of takes a step up significantly. Kind of how it's
Hmm.
supposed to. Based on that
Yeah.
potential, it's like, okay, these guys are getting really up there. Whereas Alcaraz maybe has a couple matchups early on that are potential for a tough match, but you don't really feel like it's going to be that close.
Yeah, I think it's important for Sinner his first couple matches to get him done in 3 sets. Limit that court time and then be more prepared to push yourself the next 3, 4 rounds. Whereas Alcaraz, I still feel like no matter how much time he spends on court, he's still going to be all right.
100%. But you can't discount Morojan in that second round.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think if he gets through Morojan, which is, not a given, but
Yeah.
it's a good chance. I think he's, on his way to the finals. All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.